I'll level with you guys. This wasn't what the original plan was, but AJ came up with another one, and that's what we're doing today. Since it's the end of summer, we thought that the outdoors makes perfect sense. And what brilliant ways to talk about the outdoors in outdoors ways that you do not want to be in whatsoever. This is a battle between the River Wild and Deliverance. AJ, take it away.
Alright. It's kind of funny to me how kind of dark and ominous both of these movies are in their own way. And whitewater rafting still looks really fun.
It does.
I hate water. But, you know, those really safe park rides.
Those are fine.
Yes.
As long as I have a poncho, because I don't like getting wet, as you guys know.
But, yeah, like I said, both of these kind of have a dark nature in two totally different ways, actually. We're going to go ahead and start with Deliverance. We always do Oscar talk. Deliverance got 3 major Oscar nominations with picture, director, and editing. And it is, a lot of people, I don't know how many people, like, obviously Deliverance is really, really, like, infamous, for its, a couple of scenes, but, much like I just learned with you, it's rare I meet somebody that's actually seen the whole thing and knows what it is. Because most people just think it has a hillbillies and raping, and they don't know what the rest is. And the dueling banjos, obviously.
Yeah, everyone is that.
Well, there's a story going on that builds up to this. Pretty basic, but still, there is a story that kind of, this stuff actually comes to a point to. But to start at the beginning, there are 4 guys who are basically, I think most of them are basically businessmen, who have come to Georgia to do whitewater rafting just for a vacation of sorts. So they come in, you've probably seen so many movies spoof this. The one that always comes to mind first is Without a Paddle.
Yep, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
It's like a direct spoof of Deliverance.
Really?
Which is why Burt Reynolds is that.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
So the 4 of them have come out with their, it is, gotta remember their fucking names. Ed is John Voight, Bobby is Ned Beatty, Ronnie Cox is Drew, and Lewis is Burt Reynolds. And Lewis is basically like the survivalist guy who, you know, knows how to do everything, and they're just the businessmen that don't really have any idea what they're doing. And they're coming out because they're gonna build a dam that's gonna flood the city is gonna build a dam that's gonna flood the river, and basically destroy everything and make it useless. And it's described as like the one unfucked up river they have. So they're gonna do this before that dam is built and this river is basically gone. And they give you some creepy foreshadowing when Lewis is really excited, screaming about how we're gonna rape this goddamn landscape. Just rape the shit out of it. Now, people going into this for the first time don't realize just how literal that is. So, we meet their 4 personalities. Ed's kind of the quiet one. Drew's the one that's just kind of, can pretty much have fun in any way. He's the guitar player that wants to play with the banjo kid. Lewis is basically the know-it-all that knows everything. And Bobby is kind of the weak link of sorts. And Lewis loves to always point out that Bobby's basically their weak link. He never calls him by his name, he always calls him Chubby. And he basically has to contradict everything that Bobby says and makes him feel like shit. Like, every time Bobby says something, he looks happy with himself, and then Lewis will say something contradicted, and Bobby just looks like he hates life.
Bobby, you're out of your element.
Like, they go through the river the first time, and he's, you know, really excited, and Bobby says, like, yeah, we beat that river. Did you see how we beat that river? And Lewis is just there to go, you don't beat the river. Burt Reynolds doing his inner Jack there.
Yes.
Not in the movie, that was me by accident.
Indeed.
And then he was talking about how, you know, like, man, it's really nice to come out here and see, you know, what we're losing in being in the big city, what we're losing out here. And Lewis is there to go, we didn't lose it. But the great thing, the way Reynolds plays him, is, I've heard some people say Reynolds is basically playing Lewis as basically a parody of himself. Because Lewis is one of those guys where you can't really tell if he's like the guy that's really into this, or if he's really fucking fake. Like, when he kills the hillbilly later with the arrow, and that's sticking out of the guy's back, and they're like, is he dead? And Lewis just goes over and touches the arrow. Yep, he's definitely dead. What the fuck did you just do, Lewis?
He's an expert now, apparently.
He comes off as one of those guys where, for all we know, he doesn't know shit, but he will absolutely try to make you believe he knows fucking everything. That's who Lewis is. But our main focus is basically Ed. I think he's kind of considered the protagonist, mainly. Because he's the one that we kind of follow home. But before we get to that, through this journey, we have all these memorable scenes that take place. Not just the really, really memorable scenes, but when you see like the movie in its entirety, there's a lot of memorable scenes that don't get really talked about. Well, for starters, we have the legendary dueling banjo scene, which is just as fantastic as it's been built up to be. We actually learned that in my guitar class I took in 9th grade.
Nice.
I only remember the main theme, though. The main theme of Deliverance is pretty much the only thing... I took that class... That class lasted... It wasn't just a semester, it was the whole year. That whole year of that guitar class, that little riff that's considered the Deliverance theme is the only thing I remember how to actually play.
Wow.
Like, well, you know... Being what I'm into and what I'm interested in, I figured that was the only useful thing I was going to take away from that class in the long run. So that's the only thing I stored in there. I still say the letters in my head when I hear it.
Nice.
And then that's followed up with that scene where, I've always loved that shot where they're going through and the banjo boy is there on that bridge and he's just watching them, just kind of swinging the banjo over it. And it the way he's looking at them kind of gives you that... They're crossing over into something that they're not expecting that's really, really fucking bad. And the way the camera goes under the bridge and he comes back around and keeps looking at them, it gives you that sense that something awful might be about to happen, but they're totally clueless to it. Now, let's fast forward a little bit and talk about the other scene that everybody talks about. You were just telling me you don't really know much about the context of this scene.
No, I really don't.
So, here's... Well, okay. There are these two rednecks, who I guess are brothers, I don't know. There's the one that looks as normal as they can look out here. And then there's his brother, who's the guy with, like, the missing teeth and the shotgun. And they trap Ed and Bobby. John Boyd and Ned Beatty. And they basically tell them that they're in the wrong territory and they've gone the wrong way. And Bobby kind of has that look on his face like saying, these guys are full of shit, they're just trying to screw with us, let's get out of here. But they teach Bobby a lesson real quick. They pull out weapons on them and they tie Ed to a tree by wrapping his belt around his neck. And tie him there and force him to watch this happen. It's worth noting that it's kind of absurdly funny the way, this whole time, Ed never lets go of his pipe while he's trying to get the belt off of him. So they look at Bobby and they say, strip down everything. And while the other brother watches, the normal-looking brother chases Bobby down, rips his underwear off, and rapes him while telling him to squeal. Because everybody throughout the movie has been making fun of Bobby for being chubby. So, that's where the pig line comes from.
Makes sense now.
And this goes all the way. Until it's over. And then, basically after this has happened, the brothers have decided that they're going to kill them. And that's when Ed spots Lewis and Drew come up in their boat. And since this guy is pointing a gun at Ed and Bobby, Lewis feels justified in killing the guy with his bow and arrow, which he does. The scene I talked about where he... and they scare off the other one into the woods. And it's, despite all the horrific things that we've witnessed by this point, it always makes me laugh really hard when, after the other brother runs off, Drew comes running out of the boat, swinging an oar around, saying, "Yeah, you better run!" I always find that hilarious every time. My main concern is, number one, it's been parodied so many times, and number two, just with the way it's shot and just what happens, I'm wondering just how seriously the rape scene would be taken by audiences today if they were seeing it for the first time. Because back then it was horrifying. And if you're a normal person with, you know, an even slightly mature mind, it's still horrifying. But today's audiences, I don't really know how they would take it on the first go. I don't know if it would have the same impact with them as it would otherwise. I'm really curious, like, if this would be one of those movies that would get a re-release, what would happen, how it would go. Because everybody associates the title with hillbilly rape, basically. So, and the pretty mouth line from the other brother. So, I don't know. Now, it's at this point that it basically turns into a, what is now basically its own genre, the Getting Away with Murder movie. Where they sit around and they argue about the consequences if they find his body, and it doesn't matter if it was justifiable homicide. If a murder's a murder and they're in Georgia, it doesn't look good for them, no matter what, if a dead body is found with one of Lewis's arrows in it. And it's at this point that it kind of could have turned into, because we still have that other guy on the loose, it basically could have turned into like a Straw Dogs revenge thing, which is really funny because Peckinpah was actually attached to this, or was considering doing it. But he went to make something else and John Boorman took it. I'm curious, I'm not really a Peckinpah fan, so I imagine with the distaste what it probably would have come out as, but as it is now, it avoids the, you know, it could have been a violent revenge movie thing. It's definitely more of a survival movie and a, you know, I guess if you want to get technical and go a little obvious, in symbolism or whatever, how man can turn into beast and what they do under the circumstances given to them,
yeah,
etc. Now, mind you, they do go after the other guy, but that's not really what the rest of the movie is, like, all about. And it kind of falls into this, like, nightmarish thing where sometimes you can't even believe what you're seeing. Like, Drew's death scene is always really weird to me, where, they've just gotten rid of the body, and they're on the boat, and they're gonna get out of there. And Drew's acting really weird. And then he just falls face first off the boat and into the water and floats off. And they have no idea what happened. Eventually they figure it might have been, and it does turn out to be, the other guy was hiding in the woods and shot him from a distance. And that's what happened. Which is when they decide to go looking for him. And then like I said, you get a little blood. Like you see, it looks fake, but it's still kind of off-putting when, they eventually go through the rocks and their boat breaks and Lewis breaks his leg and goes out of commission. Lewis of all people. And the bone has broken through his skin. It looks like they just threw raw meat on the Burt Reynolds' leg, but when you know what it is, it kind of now, and then, you know, they eventually find Drew's body pressed up against a rock in the water, and his hand is like disjointed and pointing in a direction, and this arm is completely contorted and like wrapped around his neck, and it's really gruesome looking. And it gets to the point where some people consider this a horror movie. I wouldn't go that far, but there are elements, like at the very end, like at the very, very end, right before the credits start. It has the Friday the 13th, pre-Friday the 13th ending. This was 8 years prior, but John Voight's thinking about everything that happened, and he's laying in bed with his wife, and he just has a nightmare of a white hand rising out of water, and it's very, very horror movie-like. That's like the last shot of the movie before the credits. And then there's the scene where like they're moving everything because of from where the dam's gonna be, and they're digging up coffins and moving them. So there's like this just constant atmosphere of death in the air that's really unsettling in a great way. And the movie has just constantly been imitated or inspiring other movies, but there's really nothing else like it. Like nothing that it's inspired or has tried to imitate it has come close, really. So yeah, like I said, I also kind of hate how much it's inspired or been imitated, because everybody basically knows the movie before they actually see the movie. Or especially if you see like a parody of it, where if you see the movie after you've seen a parody of it, it's hard to take it seriously. But then we go on. The River Wild's a bit different, but it's still the rapids aren't the only dangerous thing when you meet people on the river. It goes in with that. We meet this family who's basically cliche. You have the mom, who's Meryl Streep, you have the rambunctious son, you have the daughter, and you have the neglectful dad, who's David Strathairn. All he cares about is work. He never spends time with the family. They haven't had dinner at the table for God knows how long. They're going to go on this trip, but he can't make it because he's got to work. He's so neglectful that when he calls the dog's name, it doesn't even listen to him. So they go out with her parents, and they're there, and Wade is there. And Wade is a very charming fellow played by Kevin Bacon. Who's there on another boat with John C. Reilly and another guide. And they seem perfectly nice. They seem very friendly. Wade is very friendly and open with people and always introducing himself. And then, as luck would have it, David Strathairn decided to he brought work with him, but he's basically taking the day off and coming with them. So it's nice. They're finally going to have this family vacation they've always wanted. And it's the kid's birthday. Nothing can possibly go wrong.
Of course.
Well, what this movie does that is so fantastic and ingenious is the build-up. We don't really know fully what's going on with Wade and John C. Reilly's character Terry until about an hour in. The movie's an hour 52, I think it says. And the way this builds is just perfect. We start with, I've always wondered if it was kind of like an in-joke casting. If you saw a movie from 1987 called Whitewater Summer, where Kevin Bacon basically plays a younger version of a guy you don't want to go on a whitewater rafting trip with. So, what happens is they eventually lose their guide, Wade and Terry. A little suspicious.
Just a tad.
Their guy just up and disappears. But they're like, well, we've been stranded here, we need your help. So Wade basically intentionally loses the boat. They get flung off of it. And Tom, David Strathairn's character, has to dive in and save him. And you kind of get a sense that there's something wrong immediately here, because when Tom is trying to pull him up, Wade is pulling him down. Now, of course, they play it up as Wade is just like freaking out and doesn't know what to do when you're being saved while drowning because he can't swim. So Tom decks him in the face and then pulls him up. And then we kind of have that little... You can kind of sense something there because his character is the one that kind of thinks, I think there's something wrong with Wade and Terry. I don't know what, but I think there's something wrong with them. And then they have this exchange where Wade comes over and says, dude, you saved my life, man. I owe you. You didn't have to hit me, though. And then he says, yes, I did, and walks away. So there's something, like we feel with Strathairn's character, we feel there's something off, but it's really hard to tell what it is. Because Wade, Bacon is perfect in this movie and plays Wade as this really charming character. The most problematic thing he does for a while is take his shirt off around Meryl Streep. And he makes the little charming jokes, like she met Wade before Strathairn showed up. And then when they're going by on the boat later, she says, this is my husband. And then he's like, oh no, you didn't tell him about us, did you? Just being this really charming, funny guy that the kid likes and all that. But there's just these little clues that go and go until we finally build to what's really... One of the more subtle clues is at the beginning, when Wade's wearing this hat. And the kid sees it and says, hey, that's a really awesome hat. And Wade's just kind of like, what? And then he's like, the thing that's on your hat. And then he's like, oh, yeah. It's like, okay, not only is this probably not Wade's hat, but I think he may have gotten it from somebody that doesn't need it anymore. And then we kind of get, you know, closer and closer. There's the scene where they're calling the dog, but the dog won't come back. But the dog keeps barking, like it sees something. So they go up there, and Terry follows really closely behind Darius Strathairn while he's going to look to see what the dog is. Seems to be pulling from a hole in the ground of sorts. Something that's hidden away. But they catch the dog before anything can be found. We never find out what... I think we're supposed to assume it was the guide's body, but it's never really confirmed. And then there's the scene with where they give the kid money, $200 as a birthday present. And it starts a fight because Strathairn says, we can't accept that, that's way too much money. And the kid says, well, you didn't want to go on this trip anyway. You kind of get that sense that Wade knew offering the kid $200 was going to start family turmoil, and he did that on purpose. And then finally we have the, another subtle thing is we have, Wade is showing the kid his gun. And we just think Wade is just showing him a gun just to say, hey, look, this is cool, isn't it? But when he's showing him the inside of it, we see that 2 bullets are missing. That have probably been used. So, and then there's, finally it basically reaches its peak when Meryl Streep, it's night and Meryl Streep says, well, I need, to get a bath, so I'm going to go skinny dipping. So she goes, it starts to thunderstorm, but she's like, well, I need a bath anyway. So she skinny dips in the thunderstorm. And then the lightning, she sees Wade leaning up against a tree, just watching her shamelessly. Not even trying to hide himself, just standing there watching her. And it's at that point, yeah, Wade looks like a psychopath now. So, finally, this, like I said, this is about 50 minutes in, and we've just been slowly building and building and building. Maybe they're trustworthy, but they're probably not. And the offenses get more and more likely. And then finally, we get to the point where we hear about the robbery that took place. And it's very, very, basically, front and center now that Wade and Terry are the ones that did it. And that's the mysterious green bag they've been carrying around that they don't want anybody touching. Like when the kid goes to be helpful and picks it up, and John C. Reilly reaches over and grabs it. I was like, don't worry, man, I got that. But yeah, it's just got a perfect pace to it. And it's really... what I really love is that it doesn't... when you have thrillers like this, generally by the time you reach the climax, you get into something like really big and over the top that kind of takes away from the tone from the rest of the movie. This movie never loses its tone. It just does that building and building and gets to a climax without being over the top. It's really great the way the rapids coincide with the climax itself, and how, in order to get from one point to the other, they have to go through, like, the most dangerous rapids there are. Streep's character earlier talked about how people were, like, killed on them before. So, and everything feels real. Like, which is, like, rare in a thriller, because normally you have those characters that do something, like, stupid. You just have characters that just act on stupid things, or you have villains that do stupid things and get themselves caught. Every character in this movie is smart and knows what they're doing. And it's a really great to just watch the battle of wits between the good guys and the bad guys in this movie, because they're both kind of equally there. And one is always outsmarting the other, and it just goes back and forth the whole It's really, really enticing to watch. And like I said, and all this is set to a raft on rapids. Like, how awesome of a thriller can you have concepted here? The performances are great. Streep and Kevin Bacon got Golden Globe nominations. I think it's one of Bacon's most talked about performances because he's just perfect. Just that creepiness of Wade and then the charm and just how he's able to balance them out and use them at exactly the right times to the perfect extent. It's a really, really great performance. And obviously Streep is really good too. And she's not doing like her, like a lot of people hate Streep because she overacts, but this is probably one of the more real characters that she's played. Where you really buy her as the adventurous mom type. And of course, it doesn't skim on using the scenery that it has. The cinematography is really great. And goes along with like the scenic shots along with the action shots. The action is really, really well shot. I've been wondering like how exactly they did it without putting the actors' lives in danger. So they used that to their full advantage. And there's this really great scene where it really, really gets into like for a while you're wondering where the thriller aspect comes in, and then you just see like, oh, these are like these ominous guys, but then they seem to get more and more dangerous as it goes. Even Terry less so because Terry is Wade's bitch basically, and just does whatever he tells him to do, and you can tell because there's that scene where Streep figures out that they killed the guide, so she's looking at Wade. And she's like, so, I assume you killed the guide. Did you shoot him or did you make Terry do it? And Terry snaps and says, shut up! He totally made Terry do it. And then at the end with, when she shoots and kills Wade, and Wade just kind of goes down the river, you see that where Terry has the knife on Derek Strathairn's character, and Wade had just said, kill him, Terry. And Terry was going to do it. But then once he sees the Wade has been shot and is floating down the river, it's like he just gives up and puts the knife down because he doesn't have Wade to tell him what to do now. All kinds. Even when Terry gets character development, the characters are really well written. Subtle character development at that. But there's this great scene where Strathairn's character is on the side of like this rock wall, and Wade is down here on the water. And he's saying, like, so how does it feel that you're, like, 3 seconds away from death? Because Strathairn can't move. He's on the side of a rock wall. He's either going to drop to his death or he's going to get shot by Wade. And he's like, so, I think I'm going to shoot you in the spine. I think that'll work. And he just kind of talks to him and taunts him before he does it. And then knowing that he's trapped, it's just... This movie really knows how to build that intensity to great effect. And I have to say, as legendary as it is, and being a Best Picture nominated movie, and how Deliverance has like an irreplaceable atmosphere, of the two, I think I prefer The River Wild. Because it's just, even when it's not the thriller aspect, there's just something thrilling about the whole thing. Like just the way it looks and the way they use the scenery they have, and you have rapid scenes even before the thriller part takes over. So it's just always working to just thrill you, and all of it works in a really great way. So, yeah.
So ends another edition of Versus. Next week, we start our first of many gangster movies. We're going to be spreading those out throughout the rest of the year, so keep tuned in for those. So, AJ, any parting words?